soil fertility pe. Okay, you know these points. I just want to ensure that you have captured the more important points. Soil fertility. Now, soil fertility is a function of humus content, is a function of micronutrients. Okay, this is also called as the base content. It is a function of a slope. It's a function of vegetation and prevention of the topsoil. Okay, these are the main ones. Okay, what does soil fertility depend on? One is humus content, organic content, depends on micronutrients, which includes the bases, including calcium, magnesium. You talk about iron content, sodium content, and so on. Slope, agar slope theek nahi hai, you'll have problems of erosion. Understand that? And how are we preventing the topsoil losses? So vegetation cover is an important factor for soil fertility. Achha, now the humus content jo hai, now there are two types of humus. We have acidic humus and we have a basic or alkaline humus. The acidic humus is called as more humus, which is not the best type of humus. This type of humus develops more in conditions of water logging. The more humus, this is not the best type of humus. It develops in conditions of water logging, mein, swamps, mein, ye type ka ban jata hai. It's not good. But the alkaline humus, isko hum mull bolte hain, M-U-L-L. Mull is a good type of humus. And for mull humus, you need to have cooler conditions. You need to have cooler conditions. So temperate areas have good amount of mull content. They have a good amount of mull content. Okay, Chernozem is a good example of mull content. Chestnut soils are good example of mull content. Chernozem soils, chestnut soils, or more jo hai, you find in India along the coasts. Along the coast, there is one type of soils called as Kari soils. Ye Kerala coast mein hai. Example of hydromorphic soils. Kari soils hai. You have terai soils. Terai soils maybe you have got more content. That's why terais are not the most fertile soils for agriculture. So, ek paragraph ban jayega humus content pe. Acha. About the micronutrients, the most important factor is the presence of fine texture, the presence of fine colloidal matter. Very fine texture hona chahiye, because the very fine colloidal matter, these develops negative charges. These develop negative charges, and the negative charges, these will attract the base, will attract the cation. So based on the fine texture, we have a term, we call this as a cation exchange capacity. It's called as cation, CEC, cation exchange capacity. Jiska zyada fine texture hoga, uska CEC zyada hoga. The more likely that we will have better soils. Now, isko relate karna hai that in India, which are the fertile soils? In India, we have 4 fertile soils. One is the alluvium, along the rivers, that's fertile because of fine texture. The deltaic alluvium is very fine again, it's fertile, deltaic alluvium. The loessic soils of Rajasthan will be fine textured hai. The loessic soils of Rajasthan, they're also fine textured, and the black cotton soil. So jab aap baat karo about the soils of India, you bring in these concepts. Why are some soils fertile and some soils not as fertile? You talk in the context of micronutrients, the colloidal matter, the clay content. That's why we say the higher the clay content, higher is the silt content, higher will be the clay content, higher the silt content, higher will be the CEC. CEC, cation exchange capacity. Uske baad come towards slope factor. Now, slope is a very important factor that determines vulnerability of the soils. A very important factor that determines vulnerability of the soils. Now, if you can recall a bit, you remember agriculture mein you have land capability classification, right? Land capability classification, jo LCC jo hai, it is based primarily on the slope considerations. The very good soils are the flat soils. Okay, the good soils are not flat but not very steep either. And as you move towards very vertical slopes, where the angles are more than 15 degrees, okay, or 20 degrees, we call those as marginal soils or erodible soils. So soil as a factor, soils as a factor determine the rate of loss of topsoil, and more so in the absence of vegetation, and in the intensification of the surface runoff conditions. Okay, this is why we say the fertility is impacted in the conditions of deforestation. The fertility gets impacted, okay, in flash floods, in cloud bursts, okay, and इसी से linked है your soil erosion prevention in the presence of vegetation. Okay. Now, what I'll suggest is, agar soil pe puchta hai question, take up an example of a region. Okay. The best regions will be the soils of the mountains bana dena. मुझे ना 4-5 discuss करना है, ठीक है? So I'll have the soils. So it's like a case study. Okay. Soils of the mountains. So this the mountain slope here. So these are very erodible soils. Okay, absence of vegetation. It can be rapid loss. Okay, and these areas are the poor areas for agriculture. ये marginal lands हो जाएंगे agriculture, जहाँ पर आपका slopes are very steep. So ये problem है आपके East Himalayas में. These are problems in parts of the upper reaches of Middle Himalayas. East Himalayas, upper reaches of Middle Himalayas. Then you have this. These are decent soils. ये वाला जो portions है. Okay, but with careful agriculture. Okay, these soils will be relatively more finer. They will be relatively more finer. ठीक है? Now you come to this one here. ये foothills हैं. Foothills, typically your Bhabbar region. Bhabbar region are again poor soils because very coarse texture stones हैं ये. Bhabbars has very poor soil. ये Bhabbar zones हैं. So not good. And these are the best soils. Part of the floodplains. Okay, part of floodplains. But then again, remember, India में तेराई के बारे में अलग से लिख देना. The terai have waterlogging conditions. If there's a question on soil fertility, okay, this is one part. The second part of fertility will be two things. One is how the local topography and local climate impact soils. Fertility, okay, दो other aspects हैं. One is how does the local topography and the local climate impact soils. Iska दो example we can take up. Okay. One is the problem of laterization. So lateritic soils are acidic and poor. Give examples: Chornagpur Plateau, Eastern Ghats, Central Highlands, okay, Nilgiris. Laterization. जितने भी tropical areas हैं, all the tropical areas, all the warm areas. Laterization, talk about it. Second is warm, dry conditions में the problems of capillary action. Rajasthan soils in general. Rajasthan soils, parts of western plains. So that's one impact. The second impact will be the human aspect. इसमें आप talk about salinity, the way you know it. You talk about sheet erosion. Okay. You also talk about disposal of hazardous and toxic waste. And fourth is eutrophication. इसमें you can take up one case study. Remember we talked about one for Punjab, याद आ रहा है आपको? हम discuss किया था. I gave a map. वो डाल देना. For problem salinity, talk in the reference of Punjab region, Malwa region, Doaba region, okay, Patiala, Amritsar. You have given a regional perspective of. So वैसे ही जब बात करूं about hazardous waste, toxic waste के बारे में, you can have a case study for parts of Firozpur, Hoshiarpur, where we have these problems of discharge of chemical effluents. Yes, आपको जो भी example पता है, elevation of all of that, talk about that. So I've given a framework for you. अगर soil erosion और fertility बारे में पूछेगा आप, ठीक है? Now, to enrich on this, you can take up some quick data that I have compiled for the world level. Something on land degradation. Quick data है और ये data जितने को जहां पर भी आपका number data, you try to highlight that really well. Like box बना के you put a highlight there. So write down this one here. Globally about 25% of the total land area. 25% of the world's land area has been degraded. 25% of the world's land area has been degraded. Okay. Next point. The problem of land degradation, number 2. The problem of land degradation is just not loss of soil fertility, is not just loss of soil fertility, but also release of soil carbon, nitrous oxide into the atmosphere. Release of soil carbon, release of nitrous oxide into the atmosphere, making land degradation one of the major contributors to climate change. Land degradation as one of the major contributors to climate change. Next. Every year we lose 24 billion tons of fertile soil. 24 billion tons of fertile soil because of unsustainable agricultural practices. 24 billion tons of fertile soil every year because of unsustainable agriculture practices, and 95% of the Earth's land area could become degraded. 25% of the world's land area could become degraded by 2050. By 2050. 95% of the world's land area could get degraded by 2050. The source is Global Environment Fund. Global Environment Fund. Next data. Soil degradation impacts more than 3 billion people, most of whom are rural farmers, small farmers, and landless laborers. Soil erosion will severely impact the food sustainability. Will impact food sustainability of the world. Just a minute. Yeah. So it impacts SDG-1. It impacts SDG-1, which is removing poverty, and also impacts SDG-2, which is eliminate world hunger. It impacts SDG-1. It also impacts SDG-2, which is removing global hunger. And indirectly, it also impacts SDG-3. It also impacts SDG-3, which is about healthy lives for all. SDG-1 is poverty. 2 is food. 3rd is about healthy lives. So loss of soil, problems of water, all of it can impact SDG-3 also. So that's one. Next, write down that the most severe soil problems are in the dry lands. The most severe in the dry lands. That makes up more than 40% of. That makes up more than 40% of the world's land area. 40% of the world's land area. And these dry regions have the most vulnerable. These dry regions have the most vulnerable populations, including women and children. Hence the concept of LDN, land degradation neutrality. Hence the concept of land degradation neutrality under UNCCD. So LDN kya hai? LDN is about recovering land. Write down. LDN is about recovering land, restoration of the badlands, and reducing land degradation. So I think itna data agar aap pack kar dete ho answer mein in a box, it gives your answer a lot of authenticity. Baki gyan to dete rehna, whatever you have from your notes and concepts. Okay, but what we want is essentially is GEF. The source of data is the Global Environment Fund. Okay, it was one of the reports to UNCCD COP, Global Environment Fund, GEF. So that takes care. And I think soil types में I don't want to spend too much time. You know what are azonal soils. तो एक ही category पूछा नहीं अभी तक. They have not asked what are बाकी सारा they have touched more or less. What are pedalfers? Maybe a note on what are zonal soils. Maybe a note on compare Chernozems and something else. Okay, that's about it. The soil topic, okay, I hope I've taken care of. The next topic is factors impacting distribution of plants and animals. Factors impacting distribution of plants and animals. Now, iske liye, jo question I want you to think and consider is this question. Question likho up all of you. See if it makes sense to you. The question is, the extent and down. Ye link to biodiversity bhi hai. It's linked to distribution also. The extent and distribution of genetic diversity depends on the extent and distribution of genetic diversity depends on its evolution, breeding systems, evolution and breeding systems, ecological and geographical factors, and often by many human factors. And often by many human factors. Analyze. Analyze word always means give reasons, go deeper and tell us why. Okay, or any analysis reasons may you must have examples. Okay, one or two examples in discussion. So about diversity ke around, this is the question. So back to your notes. Now see, aap ek pattern yaad that whenever they ask you factors for a life form ho ya biodiversity jo bhi ho. Okay, you divide the factors into three parts. One is the factors related to your geographical, physical factors. Geographical, physical factors. So temperature, climate, winds, and all of that. The second set of factors are the biological factors. Biological में आप adaptations के बारे में mention करना. You talk about biological factors as the relationships, और एक third है talk about speciation, adaptation. आप example दे सकते हो. Adaptations like the type of eating habits, hibernation, estivation. You can talk about the type of reproduction systems that they have. Okay, this should not be a big deal. Asset points ko na don't elaborate too much. Okay, keep it short. But you can always talk about the relationships. Relationships ko bhi. Okay, we have this. We say they can be positive. Okay, positive. They can be neutral relationships. They can be negative. They can be positive relationships. They can be neutral relationships. And iske alawa, they can also be this relationship, this and this. They can be positive and neutral. They can be negative and neutral. So, isko hum bolte hain symbiosis. This is symbiosis, also called as mutualism. This is commensalism. One is not affected, other is affected. This is commensalism. Guys, I cannot teach all of this right now. I can just mention it to all of you. I am hoping that you know this. Neutral wala relationship actually hota nahi hai. Okay, if neither affected nor harmed, then why will the relationship even exist for that matter? This is hypothetical. Okay, this is what is amensalism. This is amensalism. Ye pucha hua question raha hai. And negative is you have got your competitions. You have competition. Okay, they can harm each other. Competitions. So broadly, diagrams mein, my point is, don't put everything inside a paragraph. Aapko is discussion mein, I think you should put more time, energy, okay, in discussing maybe speciation. I'll talk about something around discussions of human impact. So spend more time here. So don't have, agar ek comprehensive answer milta hai to, don't write everything down. Like say geographical factors mein, in geographical factors, I encourage you to use this geographical factor का hexagon is a diagram. So what are the factors? There are 6 of them. We have got temperature as a factor. We have sunlight as a factor. We have winds as a factor. We have water as a factor. We have soil and land as a factor, and rains as a factor. So don't write a paragraph on this. I said, no, conserve your words. इसी में ही give some examples. यहीं पर temperature factor, megatherms, mesotherms, hexotherms, okay, microtherms, soil or land as a factor. You've got adaptation, different type of soils, salinity, okay, this is adaptation. We have got soils, we have plants who can survive on rocks also. They're called as lithophytes. वो rocks में grow कर जाएंगे. Soils which are not very rich, but they can support certain type of fungi or algae or whatever. Water, no problem. We have got hydrophytes, mesophytes, xerophytes. Yeah, xerophytes. Yes, इसी में आ जाएगा. Hydromorphic soils. Absolutely correct. Yes. Or rains में, okay, we have got deciduous rain forests, evergreen forests. So इसी diagram में you have covered all the physical factors of the vegetation and life forms. ठीक है, तो इसको आप paragraph में मत खोलना. Keep in diagram, and whatever facts you can add there यहीं add कर दो. And just say the following are the factors as discussed under the diagram. With examples, give something points here. Okay. वैसे adaptations में don't spend too much there. Physical quality of life and adaptations, your examples, you're done. This is about the relationships. इसको भी आप discussion कर सकते हो, maybe a couple of lines, but again play. तो इसमें आपको examples देना है. Examples of mutualism, symbiosis, examples of commensalism. Think of that shark and remora, okay, fishes here. Amensalism, pine trees and grasses. Competition, the animal conflicts होते हैं. You leave it at that. Is it all of you here? So this is a possible question I'm anticipating. Okay. Now come to this term called speciation. Most of you have not read this. If you have not, let me take it up. Speciation is a factor in genetic diversity. So how do species develop? Okay, write down. That a species is considered to be unique. A species is considered to be unique if there is no interbreeding. If there is no I repeat. If there is no breeding beyond the species type. If there is no breeding beyond the species type. Okay. So if there is a species A and a species B, okay, if they do not mate, if they don't interbreed, then we will say A and B are unique species. If there is interbreeding between them and there are offsprings, फिर हम बोलेंगे एक ही species है. So when they can't interbreed, then we say that they are different species. Let's write down. Mainly there are 3 types of speciation. There are 3 types of speciation, or 3 ways how new species develop. There are 3 types of speciation, how new species develop. The first is allopatric. The first type is allopatric speciation. ALLOPA, allopatric speciation. When a large location gets physically separated by barriers. When large location gets physically separated by barriers, that does not allow for the species to interact. Each species develops its own features. Each species develops its own features according to the local conditions. So imagine this was a large area. For whatever reason, the area has now got separated. पूरा अलग हो गया. It could be continental drift. It could be mountains as a barrier. It could be ocean stretches in between. Is a large ocean stretch. ये और ये अलग हो गया. So earlier there was a species A and a species A. But ये अलग होने के बाद में the species A develops into AX and species A develops into AY. Now AX and AY will no longer interbreed. It happens because of some geographical barrier coming up in between. Okay, इसका example देते हैं. The example is a finch, FINCH, finch birds in the islands of Galapagos archipelago. The finch birds, okay, in the islands of Galapagos archipelago. In fact, this was the first cue for the theory of evolution by Darwin. Okay, finch is one type of a bird, and probably all the finch were same once upon a time. But then island is here, island is here, island is here, alag-alag islands hai, and water separates them now. So what happened in some islands, the finch have developed beaks which are only for eating nuts. In some islands, the finch has developed beaks for sucking in nectar. So they have got longer beaks. Okay. Some of them, they have got smaller beaks for eating insects. The size of beak, a small beak for insects. For the nuts, the beaks have become very, very strong, okay, and powerful ones. And in this case, the beaks have become long. So now the finch species have become different. The physical barriers of the Galapagos Islands has created different type of finch species. Yes. Siberian tiger. Now, I don't have example if that's used or not. Like, agar used hoga, then I can tell you. So I don't have examples of too many of them beyond this. Yes. Pura alag species ban jata hai. Okay. Ye pura alag ban jata hai. Otherwise, the features are very same. In many terms, in many ways, they actually look the same. No, Asiatic cheetah and African cheetah can interbreed. So they're not different species that ways. They're part of the subspecies. They can interbreed. Interbreed where there's an offspring. So it's possible for Asiatic and African cheetah. Okay? You go by this one example. Okay. The next one is, the next type of example is peripatric. Peripatric. Now, this is actually one type of peripatric is one type of allopatric. It is one type of allopatric where a species in a very large area, it's a very, very large geographical area, where species in a very large geographical area do not interbreed because of distance that separates them, and because of some local conditions, that forces adaptations in certain groups. Okay. Now, इसमें क्या हो रहा है? There is a very large area. इसमें add कर लो. There is no geographical barrier. इसमें क्या है? There is no geographical barrier. It's a very large area. Animals are here, animals are here, animals are here. Okay. But what happens is, these are now breeding here among themselves, and there is some local condition here. And this one is another local condition here. They could have interbred, but they don't. Okay. And they start adopting or adapting to local factors here. So both are, this is A, this also is A, this also is A. But distance large hai, and there's some condition here where this becomes AAX and this becomes AAY, although there's no barrier separating them. This operates for very large. So think of the entire Arctic zone across Siberia. Think of maybe the entire Amazon forest, large Amazon forest. कुछ area में यहाँ पर birds हैं और यहाँ birds हैं, and they don't interbreed at all. वैसे ही in Lake Tanganyika, the one type of fishes हैं, okay, they are called as cichlids. Okay, these fishes, they have this is in Lake Tanganyika. Okay, they are not interbreeding anymore. Long distance, and they have got separated. ठीक है? Now, example of this, एक और है. This happens. This happens in case of human interference, this happens in case of human interference, such as mining activities, where mining wastes are accumulated. Mining wastes are accumulated, and life forms around that mining waste, develops specific features. Okay. Examples में certain type of mining locations have high amounts of lead and zinc, and the metals get absorbed into the soil. Preventing plant growth. But buffalo grass, also called as vanilla grass, which was a subspecies of grasses, has developed adaptations to survive in such mining areas, and has created a new species. So इसमें कोई barrier नहीं है. It's just that यहाँ conditions change, and these have now taken up new properties. Okay. Now ऐसा ही type का एक और है. The third one, write down. Third is a sympatric. Speciation. It is very similar to parapatric. It is very similar to parapatric, but not operating over large areas. There are no physical barriers. Separating the species. It is the local food conditions. That helps evolve the new species. So what's here? So what we have is, the first type I said is a large area जिसमें कि कोई barrier बन जाता है, and they get separated out. Second, I said this is a very, very area. There's no barrier, but some life forms here, some life form here, they don't interact because distance, and then the local conditions, okay, favor this type of species growth, and the local conditions here, some species growth. Third type, this is not a very large, a small area here. Okay, the species can easily interbreed, no barrier. But what happens is, in this area, there is some special type of food available, and this area, another food available, F1 and F2. Same species A was everywhere. Now, यहाँ पर क्या होगा? Because of this food availability, it develops into A1 species, and this develops into A2 species. So they look very same. The difference is in terms of the geographical area. इसका example है one type of a fly called as hawthorn flies. Okay, hawthorn flies originally they survived on a fruit called as hawthorn fruits. But hawthorn का family का एक और fruit है apple. So the hawthorn flies in the apple areas, they developed apple type of preference, and these they developed the hawthorn wala preference, and today they have become two different flies. Hawthorn flies, HAWTHORN, hawthorn flies. Okay, we have hawthorn fruits. Okay, hawthorn flies, and we have apple hawthorn flies. Yes, food and area बड़ा नहीं है, छोटा है. They could have interbred, whatever reasons they haven't. So these are the three mechanisms of speciation and development of new gene varieties. ये आपका question था. If you look at the question, okay, how does diversity depend on breeding? Okay, ecological and geographical factors, and by human factors. Okay, I forgot one point. So now just go back. I've forgotten one point. Go back to the schematic. ये वाला. ये जो geographical factor है, these are factors. इसके अलावा जो आपको discuss करना चाहिए, this is one factor. Okay, factor, geographical factor, physical factor में A है. What you must discuss is continental drift and discuss climate change, the geological climate change. Say drift में best example होगा the unique life forms of Australia. Australia got separated in the late Mesozoic times from rest of Gondwana before the evolution of mammals, large carnivorous mammals. ये आप लिखना पैराग्राफ में. Yes, these are part of the historical. Correct. Yes, ये आपके notes में भी है. Correct. So the example is Australia. Australia separated out from Gondwana land in the late Mesozoic times before the evolution of large carnivorous mammals. Therefore, you have got kangaroos and koala bears. Okay, therefore, you have got like a wallaby, W-A-L-L-A-B-Y, wallaby, duck-billed platypus, kangaroos, koala bears, wallaby. Wallaby is like a kangaroo, smaller one, W-A-L-L-A-B-Y, wallabies, and platypus, P-L-A-T-Y-P-U-S, platypus. Not found anywhere else in the world. Ye species, yahan par, if they were large-scale carnivores, then these animals would have been killed or predated on. One example. Second example is, despite the distance, next one, despite distance, there are similarities between Africa and South Asian life forms. Africa and South Asian life forms. Lions, tigers, cheetah, elephants, the range of deers. So, South Asian rim and the African rim have much in common because they were once together. And एक बार कुछ article पढ़ रहे थे, I forget the name of the article. They said there's some type of fishes which are found in Madagascar, and the same type of fish also found in parts of your Karnataka and the Kerala coast. Because the two parts were once joined. Southern India was once joined with Madagascar. The similarity of fishes type, along the West Indian coast and Madagascar coast. So आप drawing करके दिखा देना how they were together once upon a time. That's about the drift. Second is climate change. There are similarities of life forms. Between East Asia and North America. Similarity of life forms between East Asia and North America because of the ice age land bridge. Connecting Siberia with Alaska. So North America mein horses, sheep, pigs. In North America, the horses, the sheep and the pigs are from Asian landmass. So that's Kamchatka here. This is North America. So there was some kind of a land bridge during the Ice Age. Because of this, the life forms have crossed into North America. So we're talking about horses, pigs, sheep. Otherwise, North America life forms are very different from rest of this. Around this, North America's characteristic life forms. Characteristic life forms are grey wolves. Number two is grizzly bear, G-R-I, grizzly. Grey wolf, grey wolves, grizzly bear, the big brown bear, grizzly bear. Then we have elk and moose, plus rodents. Rodents are all type of rats. One very common rodent of North America is what's called as prairie dog. Otherwise, कोई similarity नहीं है between North America and Asia. They are typically found only in North America. Elk, moose, like big deers. Elk, moose, grizzly bear, grey wolf, and rodents. ठीक है, climate change impacting. Continue, write down next point. लिखो आप. This similarity, next point. This similarity is striking because this similarity, just similarity है where horses, pigs, and sheep have come here. Is striking because North America is connected to South America. North America is connected to South America. ये connection है. But the two rims, this is called as the Nearctic rim and this is Neotropical rim. ये connected है, but the Nearctic rim of North America is very different from the Neotropical rim of South America. Nearctic rim of North America is different from Neotropical rim of South America. इसका दो रीजन है. एक तो ये कनेक्शन बहुत देर से हुआ है. It's a more recent phenomena, less than 30 million years ago. One. Number two, बीच में you have got the Mexican desert. ये भी climatic factor है. The Mexican desert doesn't allow for these animals to interact as freely. Mexican desert है, and this is the Amazon forest. They're like two important climatic barriers for the life forms to cross. The Mexican desert is like a climatic barrier, and the Amazon forest also another climatic. You can't enter and come out from here very easily. So the big mammals are all here, not too many of them coming here. South America is more famous. Your birds. South America more important for birds. Unique species like your hummingbirds of Patagonia. You have got llamas, L-L-A-M-A. Llama. You have got like llama. एक और क्या है? Yeah, anaconda also. Okay. But anaconda का जो भाई है boa constrictor है, वो north में मिल जाता है. No, like llamas एक और क्या है? Llamas are like camels. They're like camels. I'll tell you. Wait. Yeah, alpache. Yes, A-L-P-A-C-H-E. Alpaches. A-L-P-A-C-H-E. They're like camels. Llamas and alpaches, and life forms like armadillo, anteaters. Of course, we also have armadillo in India also. Armadillo, A-R-M-A-D-I-L-L. ये तो पूछा हुआ क्वेश्चन प्रीलिम्स में है. Armadillo, one of the most trafficked life form है. Like armadillos and anteaters. Okay, so अगर पूछा क्वेश्चन फैक्टर्स, ये ज्यादा लिखना ना कि सनलाइट है तो सनफ्लावर है एंड वार्म है तो इट इज ज़ेरोफाइटिक. दैट आंसर डजंट इंटरेस्ट एनीबॉडी नाउ. इट्स टू नाइव. डायग्राम में छोड़ देना. राइट मोर अबाउट दिस. द स्पीसिएशन डिस्कशन करना. टॉक अबाउट द ड्रिफ्ट एंड क्लाइमेट चेंज एस्पेक्ट्स दैट हैव इंपैक्टेड लाइफ फॉर्म एवोल्यूशन. ठीक है. एंड लास्ट में, इफ योर question allows for it, human factors, essentially agriculture. You have got deliberate implants. Agriculture, deliberate implants. Okay. We have accidental implants. While discussing agriculture, do talk about gene pool centers. In agriculture, talk about gene pool centers. I mean, 3 crops that are most widespread: tomatoes, potato, and onions. Okay, these 3 are actually not local for the whole world. ये तीनों products South America में, parts of Africa. The onion is a bulb. This is from parts of Europe. Onions, spring onions. And that's one reason why Indian culture में, I mean, traditionally we have not encouraged tomatoes or onions or garlic. They're seen as foreign foods. ठीक है? So anyways, so that takes care of, or examples may do write a case study of the Namibian and South African cheetah into Kuno National Park. Example of deliberate implants. The African cheetah into Kuno National Park. एक और example होगा rabbits in Australia. And leopards in Arabia. Arabia में they have kept leopards as pets. रईसी है. You can always go crazy when you have more than required. अभी से हो रहा है right now. Elon Musk and Mark Zuckerberg talking about face-to-face fights. सुना है कि नहीं सुना? They're challenging one another now. क्या जाओ लड़ लेते हैं. Okay. Basically, yeah, MMA, correct. Mixed martial arts में. और दोनों मान गए. We are waiting to see the drama. मैंने कहा पहले shares दे दो. Give us the shares of your Tesla and Facebook, Twitter. Yes. Basically, they never grow up, But अगर no grow up के बाद you can become what you can become, तो ठीक है यार. It's okay not to grow up. Anyways, so money can go always crazy there. ठीक है. So I've taken care of this question with examples. With example, this is discussed. The extent and distribution of genetic diversity depends on its evolution and breeding systems, ecological, geographical factors, and often also by human factors. ठीक है? हाँ, yes, you can. Climate factor तो मैंने यहीं पर कैप्चर कर लिया है ना. Sorry. Barriers, yes. और बाकी जो फैक्टर्स है ना, वो मैंने इसमें, ये तो क्लाइमेट ही तो है, टेम्परेचर, सनलाइट, विंड्स, रेनफॉल, ये क्लाइमेट ही तो है. बेसिकली इसमें आप क्या लिखोगे एक्स्ट्रा? ओके, सो टेम्परेचर में कोल्ड कंडीशन, हॉट कंडीशन, स्नोफॉल, कॉनिफर, ये लिखोगे आप. इसको आप बुलेट में डाल दो ना यहाँ पर एग्जांपल्स. से तंद्रा, फंगाई, snowfall, coniferous, wet conditions, large broadleaf forests, say hot conditions, okay, you have xerophytic. ये वाला होगा points examples. But see, think from the examiner's perspective. उसको कुछ दिखना चाहिए ना कि हमने कुछ नया लिखा, कुछ डिफरेंट लिखा. अगर आप इस पे डाल दोगे एक पेज, ये सब कब लिखोगे आप? आपकी एग्जामिनेशन में इंपॉर्टेंट है that you have to write something wherever, हर किस पॉसिबल नहीं है, पर जहां पॉसिबल है, ओके, जो ऑब्वियस पॉइंट्स लिखो, बट बता दो यार मुझे पता है, ओके, एंड राइट अबाउट टॉपिक्स दैट अदर्स डू नॉट राइट ऑन, दे विल मिस. ये टाइम कंस्ट्रेंट्स में आप इसको लिखने बैठोगे ना, आपका 2 पेज खत्म हो जाएगा. आप कभी आ ही नहीं सकते स्पीसिएशन. आई वांट इसको डायग्राम में डालो, पुट एग्जांपल्स क्विकली, ओके, पुट सम पॉइंट्स हियर एंड यू आर डन विद इट, खत्म. पैराग्राफ डालो ऑन ड्रिफ्ट इश्यूज, पैराग्राफ डालो ऑन स्पीसिएशन. सो क्लाइमेट फैक्टर इज अ फैक्टर, इंपॉर्टेंट है, बट treat it like that. इसमें कोई intense discussions नहीं होने. Fine, all of you? So that's one question. Second question. ये question पूछे ना पूछे, अगर environment पूछेगा, they definitely will talk about solutions and problems. Okay. So this, and my questions are all around that one. The continued loss of biodiversity is not only an environmental issue, but also undermines the achievement of most of the UN SDGs. लिखो question, लिखो आप. The continued loss of biodiversity is not only an environmental issue, but also undermines the achievement of most of the UN SDGs. Undermines most of the UN SDGs. Examine. Okay. So environment question पक्का आने वाला है 100%. Now this answer आप लिखो solution में, लिखो problems में. You can write as a part of what are the critical areas for priority with examples. This आप पक्का use करना अपने answer में. I'll give you some notes on this. Examples from non-deliberate implants. Non-deliberate implants में we have जो lot of insects and parasites gets transferred. एक common example के बारे में बात करते हैं, something called as Japanese beetle. Okay, insect because of rice trade between Japan and the US. Some insects have come up, okay, non-deliberate, but now they are a menace. That's a common example we have. Japanese beetle lantana is very much deliberate. Lantana is deliberate. Fine. So, just a minute. Yes. Come back to our discussions now. First point is that biodiversity is the most important component of. Biodiversity is the most important component of all ecosystem services. Of all ecosystem services. आपको चारों याद हैं आप? We have provisioning services, we have regulating services, we have supporting services, and we have cultural services. In provisioning, food is biodiversity, fodder is biodiversity, fuel, firewood is also biodiversity. Okay, it includes all the medicinal plants that we have. So examples of biodiversity is under provisioning services. इसको आप please paragraph मत लिखना. Make a table with examples. Okay, whatever agriculture we have, you understand, food, agriculture, fisheries, horticulture, go on there. Okay. What are the regulating services that deals with carbon sequestration? So forests. A regular service like water cycling. Again, इसमें forest आ जाएगा. A regular service includes climate, microclimates. Again, forests, you have got soil conditions, microclimates. They regulate all the biogeochemical cycles, nitrogen cycle. I can't have without nitrifying bacteria and denitrifying bacteria. Okay, carbon oxygen cycle I can't have without the plants. So all the regulating, which is gaseous cycles, water cycles, your carbon sequestration, you put under this one. And given one words, that's all. A supporting service, the two most important ones are pollination. Okay, second is soil formation. Pollination, soils for formation, and also wastewater cycling. Wastewater, where you remove all the pollutants back in the system. So supporting and regulating overlap rahega, some of them, but because of our diversity. And cultural is our beliefs, tribal habitats, our rituals around biodiversity. So the animals we worship, the birds we have reverence for, our belief in our forests as example of sacred groves. तो इसको आप बनाना टेबल में, yes, that biodiversity has a very important role in all aspects of our ecosystem service. But see, there is a second dimension where biodiversity is also an economic resource as a part of our natural wealth as captured under the TEEB project. I hope you know TEEB project. Pawan Sukhdev, which was 2000, I think 12 shayad, I forget the year. This is what? This is full form kya hai iska? The economics of ecosystems and biodiversity. The TEEB project is the economics of ecosystems and biodiversity. And this itself is inspired by 2001 में the Millennium Report, report by Kofi Annan. So biodiversity was considered as an economic resource. इसी से आया है हमारा concept of green accounting, concept of green GDP, green accounting, green GNP, यहीं से आया है. Okay, and as a green GDP or green accounting में, we have mapped our biodiversity with all the development goals. As a part of green accounting, biodiversity has been mapped to all the SDGs, ठीक है? जो पहले आपका जो MDG था, SDGs में all the 17 goals we have, they have some element of biodiversity. हर जगह, whether SDG 1, 2 or 3, whatever. So I'll give you 6, 7 of them. Okay, you have to map a table and leave it. How you compromise biodiversity, it impacts all your SDG goals. So आपको 17 का सारा पता नहीं हो, कोई दिक्कत नहीं है, but at least know 7, 8 of them. And please use them liberally. Okay, across environment discussions, conservation, water issues, कहीं पर भी you can have, don't just mention, keep quiet. Okay, have some examples wherever possible and some details where possible. Take it down. SDGs, SDG 1 about poverty and livelihood. इसमें है more than 90% of the world's poor, depend on biodiversity-based ecosystem services for their livelihood and employment. Essentially, we are saying, सारा agriculture यही तो है और क्या है? Okay, I mean, all of us require the ecosystem services, but the poorest require that as source of income itself. Okay, agriculture is the predominant. Agriculture and allied activities are the predominant activities on biodiversity. That's one. Number 2, SDG 2, world hunger elimination and food security is entirely based on biodiversity. Not just as provisioning services, not just as provisioning services, but also in terms of the regulating and supporting services. Regulating and supporting services. For example, decline in honeybees has impacted a productivity loss of more than 20%. Has impacted productivity loss of more than 20% because of reduced pollination. Because of reduced pollination. In बहुत जगह, now we are trying artificial pollination also. The pollens are carried together and they're sprayed on the flowers. Okay, so what insects would do? They've compromised that. And if you know this, honeybee is impacted by mobile telephones and all of that. And radiations, yes. Next, around third, SDG 3. Okay. The ecosystem health, such as water quality, soil quality, is also dependent on biodiversity because plants and certain specialized animals had adaptations for removal of toxic elements from ecosystems. Removal of toxic elements from the ecosystems. For example, dealing with heavy metal contamination, or bacterial contamination. Next is SDG 5. 4 ko chhod do. Okay. 5. 5 it's about women issues, gender issues and women issues. Okay. Drinking water, firewood collection are directly impacted by loss of biodiversity. Loss in agriculture productivity also impacts women employment. SDG 7, affordable and reliable energy. इसमें आ गया firewood, इसमें आ गया biofuels on biodiversity. SDG 8, healthy ecosystems. Then we have SDG 10. This is about sustainable practices for local communities, for employment, for better health, and physical well-being. SDG 13, dealing with climate change. Okay, so forests, what we also called as NBS बोलते हैं. NBS are nature-based solutions. इसका भी question है हमारे पास. NBS, nature-based solutions to deal with extreme meteorological events. So flood solution, drought solution, cyclone solution. You talk about landslide problems. This sub mein you have the role of biodiversity. All problems of meteorological hazards because of climate change. Then we have SDG 14 and 15, directly about the marine ecosystems and terrestrial ecosystems. And SDG 16, it's about fostering global peace. SDG 16 is fostering global peace. So conflicts because of poverty, conflicts because of food problems, okay? Conflict because of loss of habitat related, loss of livelihood, agriculture reverses, okay. Storms, cyclones, droughts, your migrations will have conflicts. ठीक है? तो ये 7, 8, 9 जो भी हैं आपके पास में, you'll memorize this, make a chart out of this and directly use it. How does biodiversity loss impact SDG goals? और ये बहुत जगह यूज कर सकते हो, पेपर 1 में, पेपर 2 में. Okay, ठीक है. That's one question. The next question is explain the concept of half earth. The concept of half earth. How can it be a driver of biodiversity conservation to prevent mass extinctions. Have you heard this phrase earlier, half earth? Yes, some of you have heard about it. Now, there is this biologist called E.O. Wilson. Okay, E.O. Wilson in 2016 gave the concept. इन्होंने 3 किताब लिखी हुई हैं. They're almost like a trilogy. Okay, and the book's name is Half Our Planet's Fight for Life. A.O. Wilson. Sorry, E.O. Wilson. E.E. Wilson. Okay. And the book's name is Half Earth, Our Planet's Fight for Life, published in 2016. There are 3 books. Okay, एक 2000 I think 12 में है, एक 2014 में है और एक 16 में. Very new concept. And all questions on environment, problems of pollution, loss of biodiversity, सब में this again becomes a part of the answer. The part of solutions that we can talk about, half earth solutions. Okay? So what he's saying is that if we are trying to survive from now on, okay, and because so much is dependent on biodiversity, on nature, we must do something so that half of the planet is entirely for conservation. That's all. आप उसमें कोई farming नहीं करोगे, आप उसमें no human activities, आप उसमें you can't have any fishing, no urbanization, nothing. Is almost left for, okay, the earth to heal. Okay, lot of controversies there, but then this is promoted as, okay, one of the viable possible also. हालांकि मुश्किल होंगी, but it possible. And this book says that our loss of biodiversity is very, very high, and no way can we revive the earth by any mechanism other than leaving the world alone. And leave the world alone can't be for the whole world, because we must survive, we must develop. Okay, so do what you want to do in one half of the world. जैसे करना है करो आप, urbanization, agriculture, whatever you want. But one half must be decided globally. Okay, and we must leave it to nature. This one half need not be one hemisphere. Remember this. He says pockets में हो, चलो एक half का एक part is only Amazon forest. एक half का एक part is only maybe the Congo forest. और open seas को छोड़ दो. Leave the mountains, leave the Alps, leave the swamps. The high productivity areas must be left. The earth can heal itself, and data tells us in some ways it can revive. Okay? The question is, tell us, how can it solve the problem and what can the solutions be? It says examine का मतलब ये है कि tell us is feasible, not feasible, क्या problem है, क्या challenge. Okay? Turn please now. One of the biggest challenges of our times is mass extinction events. The promise of Anthropocene is actually nature's nightmare. The promise of Anthropocene, where man is everywhere, man can develop, man can do this. In reality, it is nature's nightmare. Next point. Even under the best conservation practices, it's impossible to revive. It is impossible to revive much of the loss of biodiversity. Next. Loss of biodiversity is primarily linked to loss of habitat. Because of 4 main historical factors. Agriculture expansion. 4 main historical factors are agriculture expansion. Number 2 is urbanization and industrialization. Third is forest fires. And the fourth is extreme climate and geological events. All of which are directly or indirectly related to human activities. I'm starting a story by there is loss of biodiversity. आप जो भी कर रहे हो इससे revive होने वाला है नहीं. And loss of biodiversity is almost entirely because of the human factors that cause loss of habitat. Agriculture is a big culprit. Industries are a big culprit. Forest fires are a big problem. And cyclones, loss of forest, storm surge, loss of mangroves, sea level rise, loss of again forest. So कहीं ना कहीं human activities have been involved हैं. And further, as of now, the protected areas of the world are just 15.4% of the terrestrial areas, 15.4%, or about 15% of the terrestrial areas. including inland waters, and just about 3% of marine environment, and just about 3% of the marine environment are protected. Next, most of the initiatives under CBD, Convention on Biological Diversity, most of the objectives under CBD can achieve a maximum of 17% terrestrial land protection, 17% terrestrial land protection, and maybe 10% of marine protection, 10% of marine protection, which is nowhere near adequate, Next, according to Wilson, to protect 80% of what exists of biodiversity, half the earth should be protected. Half of earth should be protected. 17% of the land or 10% ocean kiya, it is not enough. Our data se work out kiye, it says, okay, without this, you cannot protect even 80% of your remaining species. Jo mar gaye to mar gaye, they have gone now, extinct. But what remains, you must do this. And further, while there are debates about why should it be 50%, of earth, the reasons to believe our present day efforts are not enough. Okay? This is one point. So while we may disagree with him, but the fact is, जो कर रहे हैं वो enough नहीं है. One. Number two, not only do we have to protect what we are currently losing, we must also protect and compensate for future losses. Hence, 50% does not sound to be a fantasy number. Third point, there are two main problems in half-Earth strategy. Number one is, there's no mechanism suggested, there are no targets, and nothing about how the conservation should be done. It's like, bas ek idea hai, but nothing in terms of what can be implemented. That's one. And when I say half of the earth, which half? Kahan par? Okay. The challenge is to identify all the high productivity zones of the earth, for maximum biodiversity conservation. So just one small table here. If you look in terms of net primary productivity, in terms of grams per meter square per year, what are the ecosystems? The priority ecosystems. Okay, they are, one is the tropical wet forests, the estuaries, and the swamps. Okay, these have more than 2,000 as productivity. Ye one will be priority area. Second area that should be the savanna grasslands. Okay, inka productivity is more than 700. The savanna grasslands, more than 700. Then we also have the temperate forests. They have productivity of 500 grams per meter square per year. Then we have marine coral reefs. They have more than 1,200. So in the half the earth, aap a table deke batana. These are the high productivity zones. Okay, this have to be the priority ecosystems. Yeah, marine coral reefs, more than 1,200. Okay? That's one. Next side down. Half of the earth strategy must include identifying foundation species, identifying keystone species, keystone species, and identifying flagship species. Identifying flagship species. Foundation species क्या है? The foundation species, they are also called as engineering species. These are the ecosystem builders. These are ecosystem, they build करते हैं. Okay, so these are plants, these are coral reefs. They build the ecosystem. Foundation में you also have the pollinators. Keystone species, these have distinct impact in terms of managing the ecosystem and also in terms of sustaining the ecosystem. In terms of managing ecosystems and in terms of sustaining ecosystems. कुछ नाम पता है आप लोगों को? What are the name of species? So these species can be keystone species हैं. They can be any of these. They can be top level predators. They can also be herbivores. They can also be mutualists. They can be top level predators. They can be herbivores and they can be mutualists. Example बताओ. Tiger को छोड़ के. Elephants. Where are elephants? The keystone species. Okay. No, don't generalize. अब आप mains लिख रहे हैं. Elephants are keystone in savanna. In particular, in the Serengeti National Park, Tanzania and Kenya. हर जगह नहीं है elephant. So आप ना map में दिखा. Which are, see, your answer has to go regional and map based. You just say tropical, then you are done. Elephants are not keystone in every ecosystem. Remember this. Okay. They are ecosystems, keystone species in savanna and Serengeti, Serengeti, Serengeti National Park. Then we have grey wolves. Grey wolves in North America. We have Yellowstone National Park. Grey wolves in North America, parts of Yellowstone National Park. Starfish. Starfish in the temperate cool waters. Starfish in the temperate cool waters. We have hummingbirds. Hummingbirds in Patagonia. Hummingbirds in Patagonia. So please map बना के दिखाना है सारा. So herbivores, elephants. You have got top predators, grey wolves. ठीक है, आप इसमें tiger add कर देना. So your South Asian monsoon forests. Okay. Tigers हैं. Lions also. Again in savanna. देखिए mutualists. Okay. यहाँ पर hummingbirds, they operate as pollinators. They help in the gene flow. So all the three can be keystone species, not just tigers. Okay. नहीं, Gir forest छोड़ दो. Okay. We talk about ecosystem, not one place. Lions in savanna, tigers, South Asian monsoon forests, elephants, savanna, Serengeti National Park, grey wolves, starfish, marine का एक बता दिया. Patagonia, bird is also a keystone species. So half the earth का जो फंडा है वो यही है. Pick up the high productivity areas, pick up the key species, and then develop the conservation around them. ठीक है? अच्छा, और एक concern है. अच्छा, वो बताया नहीं बताया. Right, next one, next point. Another of the concerns in half earth is the problem of justifying the evacuation of indigenous population from conservation areas. The problem of justifying the evacuation of indigenous populations from the conservation areas. वो कहना क्या? वो कह रहे थे कि जितने भी conservation areas हैं वहां से आपको हट जाना पड़ेगा पूरा and let nature take off. Then what happens to tribes of Amazon? What happens to tribes of Congo? What happens to tribes of the islands of the Pacific areas? What happens to tribes of savanna regions? because half earth तो impossible है कि आप बनाएंगे नॉर्थ अमेरिका. हाफ अर्थ इम्पॉसिबल है साउथ एशिया. आप कहाँ जाओगे? वहीं जाओगे ना जहां पर probably poverty है and where people can be moved out forcefully. Okay, so is it ethically right is a question. आप अपना जगह छोड़ नहीं रहे हो, अर्थ बचाना है because of survival. आप जाओगे Amazon forest, you round them up and you evacuate them. Is that the ethical solution there? Okay, there's another moral issue right down here. In fact, the indigenous populations the indigenous populations are actually the best protectors of ecosystems. They are the best protectors of ecosystems. They can be the main drivers. They can be the main drivers that make half Earth philosophy possible. That make half Earth philosophy possible. So there are indigenous tribes of Colombia, Costa Rica, Amazon forests, in Uganda, in Rwanda. We cannot be displacing them randomly. So is the idea good? It looks very appealing. Is it required? If not half Earth, but definitely more than what we are doing. For doing that, what are my priority areas? Pick up high productivity areas, pick up the keystone areas. The challenge is we don't have a proper method and we do not know what to do with the indigenous species or the communities for that. Okay? So any answer, any question on forest, any question on ecosystems, loss, biodiversity, the concept of bio reserves, kahin par bhi aap ye likh ke aa jana. And ye tables yaad rakh. Okay, if I can read, revise and remember the numbers, okay, you are to mostly younger than me, right? Some of you are doubtful, maybe. Okay, mostly I think you can remember also. और यही numbers marks देते हैं आपको. और जनरल ज्ञान मत दे देना कि forests are important, conserve them. Don't do that. ठीक है? Now you take up maybe like a case study उठाओ. Importance of mangrove systems. Importance of इसी का extension रखो या अलग से रख लो data. Importance of mangrove forests. So I'm referring to an FAO report. FAO report, which is 30 years of global forest data. 30 years of global forest data. And this report has data up to 2021. 2 साल में क्या ही extra हो जाएगा? हमने खराबी कर दिया होगा for that matter. अच्छा तो नहीं किया होगा हम लोगों ने. So that's good enough. And I want a separate box में लिख के रखना mangrove का data. One is that out of 220 countries and territories, out of 220 countries and territories, 113 have significant areas of mangroves. 113 countries and territories have significant areas of mangroves. Next, the largest stretch is in Asia. The largest stretch is in Asia, and that in South and Southeast Asia. And that in South and Southeast Asia. It's more than 53 lakh hectares. South and South Asia mein, it's more than 53 lakh hectares. Significant stretches are also in Western and Central Africa. Significant also in Western and Central Africa. So basically Gulf of Guinea coast. Gulf of Guinea coast mein, wahan par hai mangroves. And we also have in North and Central America. North and Central America. So Costa Rica, Belize, okay, Guatemala, Panama, these areas have equatorial regions and tropical areas. Okay, these areas also, Central and Northern America. Right, next. Almost 50% of the mangroves are in, almost 50% of the mangroves are in Indonesia. Indonesia has the maximum, almost 20% of the world's mangroves. Indonesia, next is India, Brazil, Nigeria, and Mexico. Nigeria and Mexico. Next, the most dramatic loss of mangroves, has been in the last 3 decades. Almost losing 200 hectares per year. Almost losing 200 hectares per year. Next slide down. The loss of mangroves is also most significant in South and Southeast Asia. In South and Southeast Asia. ठीक है? तो आप मैप में ना बना के दिखा देना. Okay, Gulf of Guinea coast you can shade Indonesian parts, Nigeria हो गया, India, Brazil का coast and parts of Central America. और ये data को ना आप diagram में ही दिखाना. It makes your एक problem है. One of the examiners I happen to talk to, okay, of course, been some time now. He says the diagrams that we make, they cannot be simply diagrams. They have to be with some data and facts and some information batana cha rahe ho. So if you're making a diagram of say South Asia, pura world mat dikhao, South Asia, Southeast Asia, Indonesia, so you can do this. These are the areas of the mangrove forests. Areas of mangrove forests. Okay. These are the most significant areas. This is Indonesia, almost 20% of the world's mangroves. Okay. This is India, almost 10% of the world's mangroves. And Southeast Asia is again about 5 to 6% of the world's mangroves. Okay, so यहाँ पर you mentioned Cambodia, you mentioned Thailand, you mentioned Vietnam. This is India, Indonesia. So आपने data बना के दिखा दिया where we have this. So don't just draw South Asia and give the country's name nahi. Okay, and also mention here that South Asia and Southeast Asia has more than 53 lakh. क्या 54? कितना बताया मैंने? 50? 53 lakh, yes. I'm wondering on this number, lakh hectares, and also has the highest rates of annual loss. So this diagram is a meaningful diagram. जगह दिखाया, loss बताया percentage, और बाकी डाल देना एक box में या paragraph में, whatever you want. So your answers has to be a bit more informative in terms of using diagrams. Okay, so what most of us do is draw some crazy sketch of a place, बता दिया cities and leave it. This is of no use. इसे नहीं बनाना अच्छा है. अगर बनाओ तो आप, okay. So you can always write here that the severity of a mangrove loss is as shown alongside. That's all. Over. Check all of you. So that's one. Now about the conservation लिखो आप. About the conservation. Okay. Maybe Indian case study कर दो इसको. Indian case study. Okay. So it is Mishti, a mangrove initiative for shoreline habitats. Mangrove initiative for shoreline habitats and tangible incomes. And identified areas. Okay, there are 3 of them. One is Gulf of Mannar in Tamil Nadu. You can always shade this. Number 2 is Odisha's Satkosia forests and coasts. And third is parts of Gujarat. Okay, these are the areas of priority where they want to do afforestation. Okay, next slide down. That Sundarbans are one of the most unique mangrove forests. But Sundarbans conservation requires India-Bangladesh collaborative efforts. ठीक है? So कुछ भी question आए ecosystem में हो, forest में हो, livelihood, poverty, is like a formula because these forests are part of our livelihood, part of ecosystems, part of loss of habitats, and case study is this one with data, numbers, and diagrams. Fine. So we are done with this one. Wow, I've overshot the time. No, partly yes, but वही है ना कि it works only when you work in collaboration with Bangladesh. So parts हुआ होगा, but these 3 are more mentioned explicitly. Okay, that's one. And next I will take this up. Next question लिखो. Present a critical review of NBS for hydrometeorological risk reduction. Critical review of NBS for hydrometeorological risk reduction. What is NBS? Nature-based solutions. So what are the hydrometeorological risks? पहले बता दो. What are hydrometeorological risks? Anybody? Cyclones? Yes. Floods, droughts, और क्या? Landslides because of cloudbursts. और क्या? Storm surge. You can also add heat waves. ठीक है? These are the main hydrometeorological hazards and risks. आपको कहना है सब में एक दो you make a table and discuss few of them. Cyclones, okay, hydrometeorological NBS क्या आएगा? Basically, you're looking at mangroves, you're looking at coastal regulation, coastal zone regulation, sorry, CRZ, no? Coastal regulation zones, CRZ, looking at coral reefs also as bulwarks against in case of floods, okay, upstream afforestation, land zonation, control of siltation, again आपको link to forestry है. Okay. Droughts में is all around agroclimatic agriculture, rainwater harvesting, nature-based solutions, landslides, afforestation. Okay, afforestation. Landslide also your slope zonations. Some vulnerable slopes must not be occupied. Afforestation and slope zonations. That's not a nature solution. आप artificially कर रहे हो. Okay, we're looking at how can you use the nature. So coastal areas में तो बहुत techniques हैं. Okay, but I'll say वो natural नहीं है. I want nature-based solutions. Floods में आप एक काम कर सकते थे, which was you could have talked about urban floods in particular as a case study. It's reviving, okay, the water sinks of the urban areas. Yes, spawn cities and reviving the water sinks. The local lakes recharge. Okay, yes. And storm surge is almost same as cyclones intervention. ये आपको formula पता हो गया? Case study में put one on this, put one for mangroves. अभी पढ़ा है आपको पूरा mangroves यहाँ पर, पूरा यहाँ डाल देना है आप लोगों को. And agroclimatic, climate smart agriculture. You have got system of rice intensification, zero tillage, right? Okay, your zero budget natural farming, ये सारा आ गया, nature based हो गया. That's all. तीन examples में the answer is done. Is it okay all of you here? And any question on hazards and disasters में, please mention a paragraph on the importance of prevention, the importance of mitigation through forecasting. That's one. आप discuss करेंगे mitigation, forecasting. Second, पक्का आप CDRI के बारे में लिखोगे आप. Coalition for Disaster Risk Reduction Initiative. CDRI is India वाला program है. Okay. Coalition of Disaster Risk Reduction Initiative. Lot of talk about this in the UN, also G20. That's about it. ठीक है? Okay, I've given the content on this. Oh, it's too late now. We have a class tomorrow, right? I also have the wave to discuss. ठीक है? ये question लिख लो and see if you can do something on your own on this. What is climate forcing? What is climate forcing? Forcing, force, F-O-R-C-I-N-G. What is? ये term पहले सुना नहीं आप लोगों ने? So what is forcing? Forcing, and how positive and negative forcing results in changing. How positive and negative forcing results in changing Earth's average surface temperature. In changing Earth's average surface temperature. Yes. Forcing का मतलब क्या है? All the factors that cause climate change and global warming. Forcing, okay, can be internal, can also be internal का मतलब है internal to Earth. Say issues related to volcanism, issues related to forests. Okay. और external होगा about the sun, earth geometry, earth का rotation and so on. So fundamentally we say ये सारा मिलाकर, okay, forcing के तीन component होते हैं. One component is change in the solar irradiation. The second is the change in the Earth's albedo. The third is change in the atmospheric chemistry and heat absorption in the atmosphere. ये तीन को बोलते हैं the main climate forcing factors. So what I want basically ना आपके answer का language change करो. लिखना वही climate change ही है. But write with a smarter set of words, vocabularies. Make it look like आपने पढ़ा है, report का नाम दिया है, okay, कितना irradiation change हो रहा है, rather than saying it's hot because it's hot types. Okay, पूरा environment इसी के अंदर ही तो है और क्या है? You know land, you know forest, you know climate change, you know biodiversity. और क्या बचा आपका बताओ forest, environment, biodiversity में. बाकी technical words, I believe you know something from your class notes also. So what I want is आपके answer should become smart now. Okay, data के साथ में, map के साथ में, okay, sketch बनाया आपने and use smart words. climate change because of these factors. उसके बाद you know what to put on here. Okay, try something on your own on this, and I'll give you something if you don't manage it. ठीक है?